Welcome to another episode of Out of Home Talks. My name is Andre V, and there is Peter Rønde with me again today. Hi, Peter. How are you doing?
I'm good. And yourself?
I'm fine, absolutely fine. Finally, we have a spring here and sun and warm, so
Me too.
I'm happy.
Well, it was the same in Denmark. You know, after 9 months of rain and showers, it's amazing to see the sun, right? So it's good.
It's a blessing. It's a blessing, yeah. But today we are talking about carrier-specific partial local networks and agnostic local networks,
Yeah.
and we don't deny that recent introduction of one-stop box network in Germany is sort of the reason why we are talking about agnostic networks today. So how did you feel the news that DHL has been investing into the agnostic network in Germany?
I think, first of all, I was quite surprised because my experience with DHL is that they have gone the opposite direction, right? So they have been entering agnostic networks around Europe, especially DHL Express. I've worked with them in many years in Denmark, where they had access to different locker networks, and so they were kind of the customer to these networks. But DHL doing it themselves and do it in Germany, that was it was quite a big surprise. But then on the other hand, if you look at what maybe their intention is to make sure that they will be the ones that offer an agnostic network in Germany, that's also quite a clever move now, because they have their own exclusive network, and then now they will be the kind of the owner of the network. If they don't do it, someone else will do it, right? Because Germany is a very big market.
I agree with that for sure. Me either. I felt it unexpected. I didn't expect that DHL will make that step, but I really welcome this attempt to build up a fully agnostic network, because we discussed before the recording, there are not so many successful cases with agnostic networks in Europe even. So I'm looking forward to see whether they will success.
I think first of all, you're absolutely right. As far as I know, there are no very big agnostic networks that have been successful in the last 10-15 years. Will it be? I'm not sure. These kind of networks needs to be big. They need to be nationwide. Otherwise, it makes no sense for the couriers to use them. But I think that the difference here is that with DHL in the background for this kind of agnostic network, they have the volume, right? So, and it's very important that they have the volume behind it, so someone will use it. Otherwise, it will just be something that, yeah, we have an opportunity to use the network, but we don't have to if it's not owned by themselves. And I think that's why the one in Germany is a bit different than some of the others that have, established a network. The only one I'm aware of is actually Finland, which seems quite successful, where they are really offering an agnostic network for different courier companies, and they've been quite successful. But that's the only one I'm aware of. I'm not sure about Quotient. They have been establishing themselves now in France and in UK, but so far I haven't seen any figures that shows that they have been successful so far.
And then there is this MyFlux also in DACH region, in Austria and Germany, who is also agnostic network. But let's talk a little bit about the agnostic network as such, because it seems it's pretty similar to carrier specific network, but it's actually totally different business. The clients are the different. The clients are, for agnostic locals, the clients are carriers. The software development has to be extremely versatile to host every process. So it's really different business than carrier-specific network.
Yeah, it is, and you can say the advantage of the carrier specific is that they have, you can say, certain level of volume, their own parcels, right? But the agnostic networks has not, right? They're in a different situation. They need to make sure that the couriers that they get on board is actually delivering parcels into it. And they need to have they need to have good software behind it in order to operate it, because there is a challenge if you can say the carriers that are going to enter this network, if they are not prepared to use to be data driven, you can say, then it can be a problem for them to have the parcels into the lockers. Just a second.
Yes, you are absolutely right, but this is not this is sort of the disadvantages of the agnostic network. There are also some advantages. If you are not related to e-commerce volumes directly, you can concentrate on the location scouting, on the really best locations where the clients are. So you have more free hands in choosing the location where to put the lockers, and I think this is actually pretty big advantage compared to carrier specifics.
I agree, but on the other hand, with my experience having tried to establish a couple of these agnostic networks, one of the challenges is that what can be a heat area for one carrier is not the heat area of another carrier. So you can actually be in a situation where you will find a very good location on behalf of data from a carrier, and then the other carriers will say no, we need it in another place. So there you can have there can be some challenges into finding the right locations. And there's another challenge sometimes which I have also experienced, is if you get the heat maps or the heat areas from the different couriers, you might end up in a situation where you need to find locations where there are no locations, right? So there is a challenge when you establish a network on behalf of other companies' data, right? So it's but you're right. You can have some sometimes you have an opportunity to place a very big locker where the utilization is going to be very, very high. And that's a good thing.
So there is also another dimension when planning the network, and usually the biggest advantages are coming out in high population cities, high density regions. But what do you think about the rural areas? Is there any difference whether you are an agnostic network provider or carrier-specific network when what comes to the rural areas? Is there any difference, or from that point of view, this is the same?
I think what I have seen so far is that when you start with a network where you have different carriers to operate on, of course the big cities are the best to start with, right? Because then you get volume, and you need to have recurrent revenue in order to roll out more lockers, right? But when it comes to rural areas, my experience is that they are kind of, in the beginning, the utilization will probably not be that high, but eventually it will just go up, because you will attract some carriers who will need kind of maybe only to place 2 or 3 parcels 4 times a week, right? But you will have more carriers to use the rural area lockers than in the cities, where maybe you will use only 2 or 3 carriers will use the same locker, and then it's full, and then you need to add an additional location for this. So I think there's different ways to see or to work with this agnostic. Maybe sometimes you don't need to give access to all the compartments or all the lockers to some of the carriers, but they will kind of have their own. And then you will have in the rural areas where they really will be shared with a lot of carriers. And I think also with the rural areas, what you often see is loyalty, because people will prefer to have them delivered to the same place, right? So the loyalty on the rural area lockers is maybe a little higher than in the cities, right?
There's also one additional point. I haven't really proven that, but my thesis is that going to rural areas, it is a big chance that you are actually growing new customers of yours, in a sense that you can attract new people who hasn't been using e-commerce at all. Because in city environment, everybody has possibilities to be delivered the lockers, and everybody who is able to buy online buys online. But in rural areas, the situation is different, and your locker actually in some rural point can trigger many new potential customers to start ordering online.
Yeah, and also another thing which is quite not funny, but one of the things that I've experienced is that it's also easier sometimes to get locations in these rural areas, right? Because in a lot of cities where you don't have any retail stores left, maybe you have a supermarket, and they will love to have the locker, right? Because they will then get the loyalty and the store traffic, right? But you also start to see these unmanned gas stations, unmanned power supply stations for electric cars and so. And what they would like is to have to offer other services as well. So this means that you can actually sometimes get locations for free. I know in many countries you have to pay rent for having the lockers. It's not that common in Scandinavia. A lot of them are rent free. But in other countries, you can actually have these free locations in the rural areas, and it can benefit on your business case, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is one thing we have been also talking a lot here in Estonia, is that this is actually the government or municipality job to provide rural areas people the same possibilities as city persons. Because nowadays there are two things: the communication, the internet accessibility, and participation in e-commerce. Those are two basic things that should be equally possible for city citizens and rural area citizens.
Yeah, and I think you're right, because what I saw with when we together with the Swipbox and PostNord rolled out the Nærbox lockers in Denmark, which were the battery driven, a lot of small cities where you kind of have this. You have these houses that were for everyone in the small city. They would like to have the locker placed there because it was kind of they felt that they could now also be part of this out of home solutions, right? It is not something that the municipalities in at least in my country have looked into, but they should, because it's kind of a way to keep the small cities, as part of the society. So I agree.
So, but let's talk now about the software that is the essence of the Parcel network, and our special guest today is Ricardo Carvalho from Blockite. Hi, Ricardo. How are you doing?
Hi, Andre. Hi, Peter. Doing great. Thank you.
Hi.
Thanks for the invitation.
You are co-founder of Blockite, company who is specialized for parcel locker software development, and you have quite a big number of mentionable big clients like Vinted Go and DHL. So let's talk about the differences and similarities from the software development point of view. What is needed for the carrier-specific network, and what is needed for the agnostic network?
Yeah, that's a great question, Andre. I think we could speak here go afternoon just on this topic. But trying to be brief, the main difference are going to be on how the platform has to be built to adapt to these different needs. When you're talking about carrier specifically, you're talking about the needs of one customer, right? The carrier you're building the platform for. They have obviously specific needs, how they do the operations. For example, Vinted has a very specific need that's not very common, which is the C2C. So the first mile and the last mile are both from the final customer. And you have to build all the tools for that. You have to make sure that it fits their operational needs, which every company is slightly different. There's not really like a full-on standard, and you have to adapt for those. The way then you build that platform is like you should, at least our point of view of how we built Pocket OS was that you should have basically a core solution that you shouldn't change too much, which has an API that they connect with, and there's a lot of standard methods, like opening a door should be always the same, But then you have an adaptable methods that you can customize to the specific needs. And this customization, sometimes it's very high customization because, very specific needs of each one. For example, what we've built with VintageGo has those specific needs of first mile and last mile being the final customer. And also, like, we built the whole end-to-end network for VintageGo, so we had to build a lot of integrations with everything. But with the projects we've done with DHL e-commerce in Czech and Italy, those ones, it also required a lot of customization because we had to integrate with PPL, with Poste Italiane. Both of them have different needs. Both of them have very different needs than Vinted. So you have to make sure that you build a good core platform and then you customize the specific areas based on how they process things, what's their operational procedures, all of this kind of stuff. It has to be adaptable. But still, it's a much easier job because you can isolate that. You can say, this is PPL software, for example, inside of Pocket OS. Now, the way this works for agnostic networks is very different. Agnostic networks, you are building a platform for a client, which is basically the owner of the agnostic network that's going to be deployed. And this client of yours will have other clients that are going to be the carriers. And these carriers then are going to have their own specific needs. So now you basically have two types of customers at the same time. You have your direct customer, which is the carrier network. You have to build tools such as capacity management, multi-tenancy. So you have to basically make sure that you have algorithms for optimizing the usage as much as possible. Obviously, an empty door on a agnostic network costs a lot more than an empty door on a carrier-specific network. Then data is very important. Data segregation is really key here because you have to give as much data as possible to your customer of the agnostic network so they can optimize the algorithms, make sure the network is being used as much as possible. At the same time, you want to make sure to not pass any information that's private for the carrier. So they have to trust, that the information you're giving, you only give what's strictly needed to the agnostic provider. Also, there's the billing part. It's quite interesting. So billing can be a simple and complex process at the same time, because obviously you can do very simple billing, but the carriers won't like that. Ideally, you're going to do some complex like location-based billing, or maybe the type of parcel when it's reserved. For example, if you reserve on the same day or if you reserve a couple of days before. So there's all of these features that can make it quite complex. And I think the main key for building this is that you have to have your platform already very modular. So you can, separate this kind of complexity, isolate them, and then work around with them. But at the same time, it has to be scalable and adaptable. You're going to have to adapt to the different carrier needs. If you integrate with UPS, they're going to have specific needs. If you get with DHL, other GLS, all of them are going to have their own specific needs, and you have to adapt for all of those.
Yeah, Peter, this was also your experience, as I know that carriers have very different needs.
Yeah, and I think one of the first or one of the biggest challenges we had many years ago was the rules for the different carriers, right? So a layover time was a big issue because in my country where we started it, we had a layover time from one carrier which was 7 days, another carrier was 14 days, right? And that's something really that could really be tricky, especially if you didn't have dedicated compartments for the couriers. Then it was actually a problem, because if it's a completely open network and you have different rules, right? How do you handle that? Do you have the same, or you use the same rules, or how do you do it?
So we are integrating with the civic users of these open networks. We are integrating with them. When we are integrating, we go through a process of brainstorming together. How can we best adapt their current needs to what the agnostic network wants to do? And this is quite key to adapt in a way that it works for both. which is difficult. Here we are basically assuming that there are some rules set up by the agnostic network provider. Rules can be, for example, you can have maximum of 7 days of a parcel there. After 7 days, you have to collect and so on. So now we have to make sure is that we have the APIs connected in a way that these kind of operations are seamless and do not provide an headache to whoever is integrating to the network. You don't want like the complex systems of DHL Express, for example. You don't want them to be changing their 10 different services that interact with this. That's going to take a very long time because it's very complex. Instead, we try to take all that logic ourselves.
Okay. Because that was also...
have
you...
sorry.
Go on, Peter.
No, I think because that was one of the challenges we had, because we did an agnostic network between DHL e-commerce at that time and DHL Express, and they were very different you can say in their software and also in their leverage on the software. But I think a lot of things have changed now. A lot of things are starting to become standard, luckily. But 10 years ago, I can tell you it was not standard. Nothing was standard, right? So everyone had their own kind of thing. So it was probably a little more difficult at that time. But
just some comment on that. I fully agree with you. And I think that there's that clearly shows, for example, on DHL e-commerce project that we are doing with them, they are basically standardizing the solution. The goal is to standardize for the whole Europe. So all of Europe, smart talker logic for DHL is going to talk the same language, going to be powered by VocaTOS, and they're going to have the same logic behind it, which is going to optimize a lot the operations.
Cool.
You mentioned also the term capacity planning, and because if you are on an agnostic network, this is extremely important things. Have you developed also any specific tools for a network operator to forecast some kind of capacity or some kind of future flow?
So we are still on the discovery phase, let's call it, on how to build these features. We've built MVPs on some of them. Some of them are already a bit over what you would call an MVP, but we are still on the discovery phase. So I cannot tell you right now that, I know exactly how to build this and this is the final solution and this is going to be the standard. We believe that we are building what's going to be the standard of this. We are working with, first we have the technical know-how, because we've built quite complex platforms for Vinted Go, for DHL e-commerce, and they are working very well. They are efficient, very efficient networks. Specifically, Vinted Go has huge efficiency. You've already spoke about this on your podcast, so I'm not going to go over that again. But they are highly efficient and they work very well. So we have that. At the same time, we have a huge market expertise of the teams we are working with for the open networks. We are working with the project One Stop Box, which you just had on your podcast a short while ago. Basically, all the tech that they are building on the software part, we are going to be the suppliers of that. And we are the suppliers of that. And we are working on the discovery phase, basically having a lot of sessions with Lucas and the whole team of One Stop Box, just understanding how can we build this best. So everything, capacity management, everything like that, we are figuring out together with them, with our technical knowledge and then their deep market expertise.
Cool. So I think we got now the breaking news from for the industry that you are also powering the One Stop Box network, and this is really cool because we just recently with Peter talked about this project and we were very supportive and we think that this is sort of make or break project for agnostic networks. It's a really first big attempt to make it work, and this is a very good news, and congratulations to your team of doing that.
Thank you.
I think it's a comment from my side. I think it's one of the most interesting projects in the last 3 or 4 years, besides Vinted, and some of the the new technologies on batteries and things like that. But I think what is very interesting about this project is that it is in Germany, and that it is DHL actually launching, you can say, an agnostic network. which can eventually become a kind of a standard in Europe because they have the opportunity, because they are everywhere, always already, and they have the volumes themselves to support this, right? So this is it's a game changer compared to some of the other agnostic networks which are depending on the volumes from carriers, right? If you're an operator on an agnostic network, normally you're depending on the volumes, right? But DSL have this advantage that they actually have the volumes themselves to put into this. So that's great news. It's very interesting to follow this project.
Yeah, for
Okay,
sure.
but can I ask it this way, that now when we know that you are behind this network also, how much did you have to rewrite your software and code in order to match the agnostic network? And is this the same software, or you had to create a totally new instance that will serve agnostic network?
So it's a super interesting project, and we are working together, understanding what exactly has to be built for the full launch. We have very ambitious timeline to launch. We are going to launch it still this year, and some things will be built from scratch because we don't yet have those tools. But most of it we already have. So a lot of it we already have the foundations built into our system, because our system is really built in a way that's very modular and adaptable. So we can build on top of that to these new features. Some of them are new. For example, the project we did with DHL e-commerce, where we work with PPL and Post Italian from the start. On those, we already had the logic of like, okay, there's going to be our core platform, where it's going to have all the core logic of our smart talker network has to work. And then we built the specific needs of PPL and Post Italian kind of centralized to fit the needs of DHL e-commerce. Now it's going to be something a bit similar. We now have now we have one box software that's going to have different clients. It's going to, I cannot announce the clients that's going to have, but it's going to have different clients, and on those we're going to adapt the needs of each in the same kind of logic. Obviously, again, there's a lot of new features: capacity management, multi-tenancy, all the complex billing that I've already mentioned. All of these are going to be new.
Yeah, absolutely, because there is capacity management. There are different kind of agreements. You can have FIFO method. You can allocate some special compartments. Are you talking also about dynamic pricing?
Yes. We're not sure if we're going to launch it from the beginning or not, because I think it's going to be very key to actually gather data from the market to see how it goes. But our idea, and I think that's one of the main advantage of working with us, is that we are very product oriented. So we're going to be constantly improving it, constantly iterating over it. And dynamic pricing is going to be one of the main features to launch after we start getting some market data.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that again, this is one thing that will definitely be useful for especially agnostic network, and for the marketing and sales purposes also. It will help to provide better services. Peter, any question from your side?
Yeah, one thing is I'm a bit curious about. How much backend system do you provide for a project like this? Are you going all into, you said billing and things like that, but what about, you can say, all the rest of the backend system, like location tools, KPI tools, and things like that? You include that into the software as well, or they do it themselves?
So it depends in our customer needs, right? For example, with Vinted, we built a lot, but locations, for example, that's not something we built, but we built almost everything else other than the sorting itself. For DHL e-commerce, it was a bit different since it is not our hardware that they're using at the moment. We basically just had to do all the central logic to connect to their APIs. With OneSupbox, we are building everything from scratch. So we are basically doing very close to everything in that regard.
Okay. Well, that's cool, because sometimes it can be a challenge if you have to, to have that also there backend system into your. So I think that's the right way to do it. Going from everything from scratch, because then you can actually build also along with the different carriers that will be onboarded, right? Because they will also have different needs, right?
So one big advantage we have is we've built this middleware, let's call it, platform where we can integrate with other carriers. And every time we integrate with a new carrier, be it UPS, DHL e-commerce, and so on, DHL e-commerce in each country, obviously, now we have those integrated into PocketOS, which means that the next time we want to integrate with these partners, be it for a different open network powered by PocketOS, or maybe just a different type of project, that integration is already done. So those, usually months that takes to integrate and test everything and so on, that's done. Now we just have to basically plug and play to be ready to roll with it.
Great, but with that, I think we have to wrap it up. This session today. It was really interesting to talk to you, Ricardo, and we got the breaking news.
Thank you. That's nice.
Thank you, Ricardo.
Quite surprising.
Thank you, Ricardo, and
Thank you.
Good luck to you.
Nice.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, André. Thanks, Peter. Have a good
Thank
time.
you. Bye.